Well, good morning. And what a good morning it is, and Jane Malashak has shown the way. She is the first of hopefully 60,000 Australians this week who will receive the vaccine. This vaccine is, as the Prime Minister has said himself, a game changer. We want to, we need to, we have to get Australia back to some sort of pre-COVID normality, and this is the way to do it. Chief medical experts have said that it's safe to do so. Jane, 84, she's shown the way. PM has got the jab. As I say, this week it's going to be rolled out right throughout the country. I'm pleased that there's going to be 134 rural and regional centres that are going to get that vaccine out this week. So important too that we get the vaccine out to rural and regional Australia. They have been magnificent right throughout COVID, leading the way in our economic recovery. And pleasing to see a survey conducted by the Regional Australia Institute showing that 1 in 5 people who live in metropolitan Australia are considering a change, a tree change, to an inland centre, to live, to enjoy what inland Australia has to offer, what rural and regional Australia has to offer. Cheaper lifestyle, cheaper housing, but certainly jobs out there. 54,000 jobs in rural and regional Australia right now. There's jobs out there, there's opportunities out there. You can live like a king and queen and don't have to fight the traffic for an hour and a half each morning in a city area. Don't have to fight the traffic coming home from work. And you can have a large 4-bedroom house with a big backyard, friendly people. Those rural and regional centres, they're big enough in which to get a good cup of coffee. They're small enough to still care.
In terms of the Pfizer vaccine, you were involved with the logistics about a week or so ago. How is that all going? Are there more shipments on their way, and the storage and all the rest of it?
Well, you've just nailed it. The shipments are on their way. Saul Resnick from DHL only spoke to me yesterday, and he messaged me yesterday to say, well, it's getting out there. We're doing our job. We're partnering up with government. It's getting out to rural and regional Australia. It's getting out to the entire country. And this is going to be one of the nation's largest logistical exercise, and we're determined to get it right. It's a massive task, but the fact is, Jane has shown the way. 60,000 this week. It was a great day yesterday.
In terms of also the vaccine, yesterday were you disappointed last night when the chairman of Tennis Australia was talking about the vaccine? She was being booed by the crowd.
Well, I think it was rather disgusting behaviour. I don't like booing at any event, and certainly any sporting event. But Jane Herdlicker has done a great thing for Australia. In fact, with Virgin Australia, with making sure that we've still got those flights right across the country. We're proud of the fact that our $2.72 billion of assistance, sector-wide assistance, has helped Virgin stay in the air. We're proud of what we've done as a government, and Virgin should be proud of what it's done as a company to keep those planes in the air, because planes in the air means jobs on the ground. Jane Herdlicker, of course, her involvement with Tennis Australia, making that speech last night, mentioned vaccines and got booed. Well, that's not Australian. I'm sorry, that is just un-Australian. This vaccine is going to get our country back to some sort of pre-COVID normality. This vaccine is going to prevent Australians from being in an ICU bed down the track. This vaccine needs to roll out right across the country. And while it's not mandatory, while you don't have to get the vaccine, I encourage Australians to do so. Not just for their own sake, but for those people who are loved ones, those in and around in their families, but also that stranger on the bus, that stranger on the train, that stranger they might bump into, and particularly that elderly Australian. They owe it to them to get the vaccine. They owe it to them to do their bit for Australia.
A third woman has come forward this morning alleging that she was sexually assaulted by the same former government advisor. Are you surprised that there are now more than one woman, and how deep does this problem run in the coalition? Well,
as the Prime Minister said, you'd have to be kidding yourself if you thought this was just something that happened in the Parliament. This sadly happens all around workplaces across Australia. And you mentioned coalition. I think that's very unfair. This sadly happens in other workplaces and in other political parties. It shouldn't happen. People should have respect, and certainly should have respect for women. The women who work in this workplace and every workplace deserve that respect. I know that Brittany is going to be making a statement to Australian Federal Police, as I understand, this Wednesday, and that's good. That's an important step. Prime Minister has certainly put in an external complaint mechanism so that that can investigate, and he's put Celia Hammond in charge of making sure that that process works as far as the parliamentary internal processes are concerned, and Anne Webster from the National Party will help Celia Hammond in those efforts.
Just following on from that, does the PM and does the government in general, along with the opposition, need to make a statement this week about the independent inquiry into the culture and safety of Parliament House?
Well, they may well do that, but the important thing too is Brittany's welfare. That's very important, first and foremost. She's making a formal statement, as I understand, to the Australian Federal Police this Wednesday, and probably, given the fact that the nature of that, it's probably inappropriate for me to comment further.
And just back on the vaccines, given the booing at the tennis last night and the protests that we saw over the weekend, doesn't this show that the government is going to have a bit of a battle on its hands to convince Australians to have the jab, other than, you know, aged care residents, health workers and so forth, but the general public?
Yeah, well, it will be a challenge, but when you get Pete Evans and other people out expressing their nutty ideas at protests, I mean, some of these protesters, if you looked at other recent protests, I mean, they turn up to everyone. They're against everything. They're against life in this instance. They're against the fact that people should be getting the vaccine. While it's not mandatory, I absolutely encourage Australians to get it. And as I say, not just for their own sake, but for those around them, their loved ones around them, for those people they don't even know who they might come in contact with. It's so important that they get that jab.
Just on Facebook quickly, there seems to be an impasse between the government and the company on this. How concerned are you that this will continue to go on, that news will continue to be blocked, particularly in regional areas which aren't as well serviced by the major news organisations?
Well, you've all turned up today, and I encourage you to keep doing that. I did a media conference in Geraldton on Friday, and we had any number of cameras and reporters there. Those efforts of those journalists deserve to be compensated. The companies that send them there to interview politicians and to cover events, that deserves to be compensated. Why should Australian media organisations spend all this money on fine journalists and camera people such as yourselves and not be rewarded by a big tech company? Now, I know there will be more discussions to that effect, and that is good. But, you know, Facebook should be paying for the content they use online.